On tonight's program, we talk about puzzles and how to implement them.
What exactly do I want to do? What's the aim of the puzzle?
What sort of music do you Foundry to?
I would play some of the music that you had linked in that playlist, and some of the stuff that I myself was already playing, and that's how I would test combat.
And the usual reviews and Foundry talk.
Yesterday and today, I spent a few hours throwing together an interior map that I thought would be something that would be interesting to use for PvP.
All ahead full for the Foundry Roundtable. Hello and welcome to episode 35 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. With me is a man who helped end the partisan gridlock in his local PTA, Markhawkman.
Hi.
And the architect of the famous chess move, grab the board and run, Hippiejohn.
It wins.
Greendragoon couldn't be with us tonight, but we have one of our regular contributors, Bazag.
Yeah, hello everyone. It's been far too long since I've been on, so I thought I'd, take control of your minds and make sure we do a topic that I know a bit about.
Yeah, it's great having you here. It'd be nice to have you more often.
Yeah.
The only problem is he tries to stab us all the time.
Yeah, right. Well, if you have me on more often, you'll get immune to it.
Ah, I see. Well, I wanted to start tonight, if I may, with a little pet peeve of mine. And that's the phrase bad writing. I was looking up information on a TV show from the UK that I've been watching called Primeval, and ran across some reviews that stood out to me because a couple of these had the phrase, suffers from bad writing. And I'm thinking to myself, what an absolutely meaningless phrase. I've seen it leveled at plenty of Foundry missions over the years, including the Purity series, and it bothers me because I don't have the slightest clue what it means. I mean, if you're reviewing something, you gotta give me something better than bad writing. Like, I could see that plot twist coming from a mile away, or the dialogue was hammy and over the top, or characters were flat and uninteresting, or you used the wrong word here.
Yeah,
things like that.
To me, bad writing is one of those things where it's this carte blanche. I feel like saying something bad about this, but I don't feel like taking the time to actually explain myself.
I think sometimes it's people trying to sound like they know what they're talking about when they don't actually know what they're talking about.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate for you guys here.
Fair enough.
Sometimes I think it may be someone who is trying to sound more intelligent than they actually are, and they don't have an actual complaint. But sometimes maybe it's someone who has like a complaint that they can't put into words. Maybe the dialogue didn't feel right to them, but they don't know how to tell you what about it felt wrong. Maybe there's just something they can't put their words around, and so they just say it was bad writing, not because they're being vague, because they don't have the right words to put around it. That's just another possibility.
It's certainly possible. But I mean, I still think that if you want criticism to actually do some good, I think you need to get specific.
Oh, I agree. Like I said, I was just going to play devil's advocate for a second. I agree.
Well, we always appreciate having the other opinion.
That's the other, what you were saying about it earlier is that bad writing is not what I would consider constructive criticism. It's just criticism.
Right.
And as people who are putting creative things out there, we would rather have constructive criticism that we can that can help us. So anyway, Foundry news for the week. Of course, we have the latest episode of the Purity series out, which would be Purity 3 of Honor by Captain P.F. Dennis. I should mention that Captain P.F. Dennis is actually sort of the head writer for the Purity series. After we had our big brainstorming session, Captain P.F. Dennis, he took notes down of everything we sort of were throwing around, and he went off and he wrote, what was it, like a 10 or 12 paragraph synopsis for each mission. He came up with the overarching storyline and then the synopsis for each mission, after which it was given to each of the authors to actually do the scripts. So, I don't know. As I was posting earlier in the week, I thought that was one of the coolest parts of it. is that you have different authors making a different take on, the continuation of this one story.
And different authors' ways of writing dialogue and different authors' approaches to map building. It's really fun. And just mission construction. It's good to see so many different, I'm enjoying that aspect of it.
And we're getting really good responses so far. I don't know, Baz, what do you think? Because, yours is episode 2. Yours is already out. Mine is obviously not out yet. But what do you think as someone who has had an episode of this series out for a week now?
I think the response here has been quite good. Mine has probably been the most controversial out of the 3 of them that are out so far.
Which isn't surprising.
Which is considering it's one big wacky trip, surreal, and no one knows what's going on.
Which we should say at this point was Cerberus Films' idea. So blame him for that.
I'll definitely blame him from everything.
Or congratulate him for that fault. If you liked it,
nah. Everything else is me. I'm all the, yay, me. But yeah, it's been a great, a great fun and a good challenge to work together to, create just one aspect of this story, because it is really all these 6 missions are just this one single story that are split out over time. So it's been a blessing and sometimes a bit of a curse, because, you do have to think about where you start and where you end each particular mission.
And you gotta make sure that nothing in your mission contradicts what happened in a previous mission.
Well,
I think we've been fairly good about that, though.
Play testing, yeah. That's all part of the play testing. Though, with mine, it doesn't really matter, because it's all, as it's just revealed, it's a dream. Sorry for the spoilers.
Spoiler alert.
So that doesn't really play as much, even though there is things that, you still have to, draw on some elements from the first one, such as you being upset with the Admiral. Yes, but still, it's still great fun to do.
Definitely. Next week, of course, will be the 4th part, which is by Casmodian. After that, we got one by Relum Time, and then the conclusion by me. So, looking forward to getting those out for you. Other news, the Foundry Challenge, publishing day was today. And
Woohoo!
We have about, 12 missions?
I counted 13.
13.
Yeah, there were 10, and then literally in the last day, three more people said, "We're in! Here's our missions."
Nice.
So, there's 13.
I know some other folks are critical of these Foundry Challenges, but I think they're fantastic myself. Even if I'm not in them.
Oh, I'm in it.
Yes, Hippie is in it, but we encourage everyone to vote for the best mission, even if it's not Hippies.
It's probably not Hippies. I'm going to say it's probably
maybe especially if it's not Hippie. But let's see. When is the end date for voting?
November 3rd.
Excellent. So a couple of weeks, and there we go.
Yep. Hey.
The only other thing I have under news is that I had sort of a little Twitter conversation with Brandflakes earlier today, which is Wednesday, about whether Voth NPC groups would be in the Foundry. He said that is the current plan, but he did not know whether it would be at the Season 8 launch or not. And he also cautioned me that plans change. Obviously, we've all been around enough to know that plans change, but as he pointed out, not everyone is. So, bottom line, Voth in the Foundry is a probably, but don't know when. I don't know. I think they've been pretty good about getting us new enemy NPCs lately as they add them. So I'm optimistic about that.
I already want to make Miranda Mayhem fight dinosaurs with lasers on their heads.
Mm-hmm. I already want to make a Pacific Rim inspired mission. So
absolutely, I want to make.
Have you been talking with Zorbane?
I need a Godzilla mission.
As we also revealed over Twitter today, I am Zorbane's American clone, apparently. 'Cause we think so much alike.
Well, did you see that thread on the forums about the possibility of Cryptic has not said anything about whether they're going to let players do this or not, but several players made a thread about the possibility of Cryptic, since, we have Voth who wear power armor, maybe letting players use power armor.
Who knows?
I know.
Sorry.
But,
Sorry.
If they are, they have not said one way or the other yet. I don't know. Could be interesting. I mean, and of course, the whole Voth and the whole, dinosaurs with lasers on their heads thing has erupted into all sorts of, whether or not this is Star Trek kind of a thing. And I was thinking about it today. I wasn't enthused when I heard, about, power armor and mechs and that sort of thing, because we've never seen that in Star Trek before. But I was thinking about it, and Star Trek is so widely varied that it's like everything could be Star Trek.
Actually, the one thing I thought about when you mentioned that is Hippiejohn combat armor. It's not power armor in the sense of what you think of when you see Iron Man or one of the Macross TV shows, but it has many aspects of power armor. Because, it's actually something that with minor modifications can be used as a full environmental suit, and it has built-in weaponry.
Yeah, say if you look hard enough, you can find sort of little threads to pull on to find basis about just about anything in Star Trek to justify.
I guess for everybody who hates the dinosaurs with laser beams on their head, I have only to go back to the way I kind of feel about the game in general. I don't expect everything that they make to be for me. But there are people out there who are loving the idea of dinosaurs and everything else that is coming along with it. And you know what? Now they've got something to do in the game, and that means they'll come and play this game because there's dinosaurs. Whatever the reason, to me, that's a good thing. That we have options. If you don't like it, not everything in the game is designed for every person. If you don't like it, you don't have to play that content. So,
another thing I was thinking about is that it really does make sense for the Voth to actually have combat pets that are large.
Yeah, you just compare them to the Klingons using Targs, that sort of thing. And we use animals for war and have for many, many, many thousands of years.
Although from today's dev blog, they were called genetically engineered dinosaurs or something like that. And I'm like, okay, I can live with that, kind of. I'm not sure.
It's one of those things where we all have to wait and see how it's implemented.
Exactly.
And that will be the real determining thing is, there's so much that people do before things are even released now that it's like, just wait and see how it turns out before you criticize.
People really like to yell about something before it has even been released, before they even had a chance to see it. So.
Mm-hmm. I say the things I've seen on Tribble I've liked. So anyway, let's move on, shall we, to what we've been working on. And Baz, why don't you go first? What have you been working on lately?
Well, it's certainly been the Purity. I've just completed that, and that's out. And I'm taking a short break before I continue on with my own projects. I think last time I was commented about a superhero one I was planning. Heroes and Villains, I think. Yeah, that's still in the works, so that'll come out eventually.
I bet you Hippie will like that one.
Oh yes, Hippie will like that one a bunch. It's almost a guarantee.
Now, were you like me, Baz? Did you have a whole bunch of things that you sort of put on hold for Purity?
Heroes and Villains was the only one. I've been a bit slack, I admit, in terms of actual development. Just been so much other things that I've been needing to do recently that I've had to put off lot of things.
That's right, of course, because you started a podcast. Is that right?
Yes, Bazag Stabs. We got our first dev interview the other couple of weeks ago, so that was with Cryptic Kestrel. So that was a fun time.
Yeah, we loved talking to her. All right, Mark, you've been back in the Foundry actually, so tell us, what have you been doing?
Well, yesterday and today I spent a few hours throwing together an interior map that I thought would be something that would be interesting to use for PvP. Currently published under the name Movement Testing, but it's only the first part of this is designed as a PvP map. The other stuff is just random idiocy I made for testing purposes on previous occasions. Anyway, so the basic idea here was to see what you could do as a Foundry author to make an interesting piece. Honestly, I think it came out reasonably well.
So, can you kind of describe the map to us?
I took the Barge of the Dead map, hid the Barge of the Dead behind a bunch of giant stone slabs, and set it up so that there were 3 levels that you could run around on, and various different ways to go up and down between the levels. Oh, and the higher level has balconies that you can shoot at people on the lower levels from.
Nice.
Good 3-dimensional combat layout. That's good.
Yeah, it actually has 3 levels. The lower level is currently only on one side of the map, but I could possibly change that later. I'm not sure if I'm going to or not.
Of course, that'd be the interesting part of making a PvP map in the Foundry, is you could continually update it.
Yeah,
if you wanted to.
One of the fun things here is that since this is the Barge of the Dead map, the 0 altitude is slightly above the level of the pink stuff that passes for water. And I decided that for the lowest level, I'm going to make the players run through the...
All right, Hippie, what have you been working on?
Getting my challenge entry published. Basically every time this week that I opened up the Foundry, the best portion of my time was spent playing the mission from the start, taking notes on every little thing. I mean, where I thought that I saw a spelling error, the only wish that I could have had is to have one other person or another couple of people look over it, because you know what happens when you've looked at the text so many times yourself that you will miss the spelling errors that are there. And I'm not certain that there are any. I may have caught them all, but yeah, my week was spent every time I opened the Foundry playing my own mission, adjusting the tiniest bits of the X and Z coordinates or the Y coordinates of things, and just making sure that the flow worked exactly the way that I wanted it to. And in the doing of all of that, I've got the mission file and 2 maps already created for episode 3, and episode 2, where it ends, will probably give a good indication for anybody who plays it what Mayhem episode 3 is going to be like. So that's what I spent my week doing.
Always nice to get to a point where you can publish, especially if you're on deadline.
I loved pressing publish this morning because I said to myself, unless something here completely breaks the whole mission that I wasn't anticipating, I can forget about this now. Like, I can stop thinking about this mission and start doing something different. So I like that feeling, certainly.
That's, I'm sort of zeroing in on that myself here with my episode for the Purity mission, because my testing window is coming up, so obviously I have to have the thing done by then. I didn't get much done over the weekend because I was actually on a road trip, went back to see some friends and go to a football game at my alma mater. It's the homecoming game. Seemed appropriate. But I've just got a few things to finish up, really. Just a little bit of writing. And one of the things I plan to do this week, which is usually either the last thing I do or the thing that I forget to do is essentially sit down and go through every dialogue tree and put in some more options for people to give some different responses, even if the options don't necessarily lead to anything different. I'm sure people like to have more options. Obviously, you don't need to do it everywhere, and the story still has to go where you need it to go. But I think people still like having at least the illusion of choice, so that's something I'm just going to sit down and force myself to do. I don't know, Thursday or Friday, something like that. But the mission's in really good shape. I'm done with like 90% of the maps. Most of the combat is in, all the NPCs are in, all the, like 80% of the dialogue is in. One good night of work and I could probably have it at a point where it's ready to be tested. And that's a good feeling. Especially after how many months of work have gone into this thing, and obviously being the concluding episode, it's definitely some pressure. I think probably the first episode and the last episode are probably like the biggest ones for pressure on the author. But I think we've got something good in store for you guys.
I do too.
At least I hope so. All right, mission reviews. Mark, why don't you start us off?
Okay. This week I played a mission named the Iconian Connection by, well, in the game he uses the handle pfrmacospecialist, but on the forum he uses the name mattjohnson. Anyway, the basic plot of this is that Starfleet has been working on an experimental research project for upgrading the weaponry of the Galaxy line of starships, using the Galaxy X Dreadnought as a prototype for this new line of combat guns. Then you go there to look and see how things are going because, well, someone managed to steal blueprints of an early stage of the development work, and they want you to figure out who did it. I'm not going to go into too much detail to spoil the plot or anything, but anyways, you find out who stole the stuff, you hunt the person down, and then you find out what's really going on, which is what leads into part 2. Oh, and apparently you end up working with the Klingons to figure out what's going on. That was the really interesting plot twist, because you don't fight the Klingons for the entire mission, you only do that for a little bit. Anyway, apparently the mission is called the Iconian Connection because it's the Tal Shiar who's behind it all. And, well, I'm sure you can guess where that's going. Anyway, so, I thought it was pretty good. The overall story was very well handled, and well, there might be a few things that were a little bit of a stretch. As a general rule, it was very, I guess you could say, believable the way the story played out. And, well, also, he did a very good job of setting up the maps and decorating and populating. There were a few minor hiccups with a few things that didn't quite fit where they're supposed to, but overall it was extremely well done. Oh, another fun thing was that he put on some of the maps these consoles that you can interact with and read default dialogue to give you a backstory about what's going on. Some of these are things that only exist inside his Foundry mission, but some of them are things that are references to the backstory that he used when writing the Foundry. So that was another very nice touch there. And so, it's definitely a good mission worth giving a play. He has finished writing part 2, but I haven't.
All right, sounds good. Hippiejohn, what have you got for us?
So I'm making it a point now to play all of the challenge missions between now and November 3rd. So every week between now and November 3rd, I will have very short impression reviews, rather than deep in-depth reviews of the missions that I play, because I'm playing them to decide which one I'm going to vote on, which means I'm not going to sit around and take notes on them. I just might occasionally write down an impression here or there. So considering that they all published today, I got to play one. And what I played was I played the only Klingon mission in all of the entries. It's by isthisscience, and it's called Bloodstained Mirror. It's the follow-up to the mission that we did, the kind of broadcast UGC type thing on Rose Tinted Mirror. And the only issue that I have with it is that it is a direct follow-up from a story sense. There's some care taken to making the mission something that you can experience just as it is, and certainly a good part of the mystery of it makes it something to experience just as a Klingon captain. But having played Rose Tinted Mirror made this feel, from a story sense, a much richer experience. So I don't know that it kind of stands as strongly on its own. Like I said, these are just a couple of impressions I had, and then I'm going to have to find some way to get in touch with isthisscience, because I ran into mission ending, mission breaking, I couldn't go any further issue with the mission on one map. But that's interesting, because the first impression that I wrote down to talk about is that there are map and spawning issues, very early on. From the minute that the mission starts, there are enemies that are spawned inside of a hill. My bridge officers, half of them spawn inside of a hill, and there is a way that I, of course, did, because I wandered the wrong way on the map, to fall behind some geometry and just not be able to go anywhere and just have to beam out. So there are a couple of issues like that. I noticed a couple of little minor spelling issues, and there was one place where I could see that he was typing in the text very quickly, because what was obviously supposed to be a patent that was patented in the year 2408 is written in there as patented in the year 2804. And I'm like, wow, this was patented in the future when I ran across that. And like I said, there was a point I feel like it was pretty late on in the story where I was supposed to reach what looked like a reach marker. There was a green circle on the ground that was go here. There was a person standing there, and I kept running everywhere inside of that circle, and nothing triggered for me. And I had to beam out and end the mission, which made me really sad, because I was enjoying the story, which wasn't a surprise. I like isthisscience's writing a great deal. So that's my impressions of the first one that I played, and I look forward to trying it again and hopefully getting all the way through it. So
I've while I was recording this, I was actually playing the same mission as well, and I got stuck at the exact same spot. I'd like to shout out that Bazites, yay, Bazites. Yeah, so isthisscience, I can't remember. But he makes a reference to me, so that's sort of an automatic +1 for the review.
But I think you were saying you also got stuck, right?
Yeah,
and
it's the same issue.
I'm gonna send him a tweet right now, actually, and be like, "Hey, man."
Because I think it's generally accepted that if you have a thing that people can't finish your mission, it's okay to go back in and fix that during the challenge.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, let's see. I played a mission called Homesick Heroes by Amahood. Amahood is somebody that we've reviewed missions by him before, and to be perfectly honest, we didn't particularly like his missions that we reviewed before, but I actually liked this one a lot better. I think the writing was good, and the writing was better, and I'm sort of falling into that same track I was talking about before. The question is, why was the writing better? And I think it's because his tone was better. He had in the previous mission that I played, he had people speaking like modern humans. He had Starfleet officers being very informal, things like that. And in this one, he had, there was a bit more formality among your officers. Now, this was actually a Romulan mission, Federation Romulan mission. And, he didn't have them with, big emotional outbursts, which I don't think you would see from, highly trained starship officers. So the writing seemed to suit the mission better than in his previous ones. Well, maybe Klingons, but we weren't doing Klingons this time. So it seemed to fit better. The plot is basically this. You are trying to find a secret Tal Shiar base on New Romulus. You actually get to go to New Romulus and go to, I probably pronounce this incorrectly, but the Atli, the river, and you actually go, the mission door is actually behind the big Nanov that's there, which I didn't know there was an interact object back there that you could set a door to, which I thought was pretty cool. He did a good job picking a map that fit with New Romulus. I felt like I was still on New Romulus. The cave map that he picked was the one that's purple. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, but it's the purple one. Alien Cave. And that felt like it really fit, like I was just, walking in the door. I will say that, I won't ruin it too much, but I'll say that you do a little bit of time traveling. This wasn't for the challenge. This is one that he's had out for quite a while. But you do a bit of time traveling, and the phrase the title Homesick Heroes actually refers to you. But that's all I'll say from there. Now, his mission construction was good. There weren't any problems with it. I didn't have any trouble finding my way around or, finding the objectives. There was one point where he had you scan some debris, but instead of actually interacting with the debris that was there, you interacted with some small objects placed below the floor. I'm personally not sure I would do that. I mean, it didn't seem like there was any reason that you couldn't just interact with the debris, the debris objects that were there, but that's okay. There was another point where he had, the idea was that you're in the future on future New Romulus, and you have to escape without really harming any of the future inhabitants of New Romulus, any of the future Romulans, because they're friendlies, but they are suspicious of you. They want to stop you. So he has it where in dialogue it says you set your phasers to stun, which is okay. I'm totally cool with that. But then he has 3 kill objectives. That one says defend yourself again, defend yourself again. And I would do it a different way. Since you want to avoid harming these guys, since they're friendlies, I would have it so, just a reach marker objective where you're supposed to go, and put the mobs down and have the player be the choice of whether to fight through them and stun them, air quotes, or, run around them, find ways around them so that you can actually avoid harming them. That's how I would do it. He does some good custom building. There was a really interesting sort of 2-level building that he made that I thought was really good. Had nice windows around it that were sort of, so it had a real open feeling. There were just a couple of little problems with it. For some reason, some of the assets he chose, really catch the light and do that blooming thing where they just make bright white and wash everything else out. So, I mean, unless he really likes that, which, fair enough, I would maybe think about finding new objects to, they're sort of the pillars on the corner of this building. The other thing is that a lot of things were sort of misaligned in the building. You had ramps that were, had a lip on them that were just slightly lower than the floor next to them or slightly higher than the floor next to them. You had console that was off the floor a little bit. And I was wondering as I was going through this if he had everything set to map geometry so that, if you have something set to map geometry. And
I've played that one, and unless he's changed it since then, yes, he did. Because there's something I noticed with the windows, that each of the windows was a slightly different height.
Mm-hmm.
If you had it at 0 altitude, it wouldn't look like that. You
Yeah, it's easier to align things at 0 altitude. So that's my advice to him.
I actually talked with him about that after I played the mission, and he mentioned that if he was going to do it, he might change that, but I guess he hasn't gone back.
I don't think it would be too terribly difficult to change it if he just went through and just changed every object to 0 altitude and then sort of looked at them and saw where they were at. Probably just take some minor adjustments till they were all pretty good aligned.
Well, especially with the windows, all you have to do is you set one of them to 0 out, and then you tweak that to be the right altitude, and then copy that altitude to all the other ones.
But I think it's definitely the best mission of his that I've played. And I gave it 4 stars, and I would recommend it for Romulan players. And use this as usual to encourage people to make more missions for Romulans, whether Fed Romulans or Klingon Romulans. I know that's definitely the next thing I'm working on after the Purity series is over. Alright, well, Greendragoon isn't here, but we do have a tech topic that he was going to bring up, so we'll bring it up, and it's puzzles. Now, I think we may have talked about puzzles a little bit before, but it's something worth talking about because, a lot of authors include it. A lot of authors think about including it. And there's varying ways, of course, to go about it. And we have with us somebody who has put some puzzles in his missions, Bazag. So sort of, if you could, Baz, kind of tell us about some of the puzzles you've used and maybe how you went about making them.
Sorry, I had myself.
I was going to say, he'll tell you later when his microphone's not muted.
There's a whole different type of mechanisms you can use to create puzzles. One of the simplest ones is just use a variety of interacts to make to force the player to make a decision. It could be, there could be all, I've done a tutorial about this, but, about some of the different ways. But another way is to do it through dialogue. But, I think one of the best puzzles that you can do is sort of a hybridized way, where you incorporate puzzles within puzzles, if that makes sense. So the aim of the puzzle is to, let's say, gain access to a secured area, but to do that you need to open, to enter a code. To enter the code you need to find it, but where is that code? How are you going to find it? Is there, that can be a puzzle in itself. Just doing that sort of thing. So it really, with puzzles, it really depends what you want to do. And for me, I ask myself a number of questions when I create a puzzle and those questions determine, just the style of mission of the puzzle that I make. Some of the questions are like, what exactly do I want to do? What's the aim of the puzzle? So, puzzles there is, the way I define puzzles is there's a success, and there's a fail, options, and there might be, different types of success and different types of fail. What is the success and what do I want to happen if I fail? Sometimes it's just try again until you succeed. Other times, you might want to spawn in, some mobs or create some other difficulty for the player. So that's the first thing. And then I look at, how do I want the player to interact? Does it want to be something that the player can figure out themselves, like just interacting with the puzzle, with the decision-making process, the answers to the puzzle? Or is it something that I want to make the player to work to try and find the answer some other way, like some sort of putting two things together and saying, oh, this must be the answer because X, Y, and Z. they're the two different approaches, in that regard. I suppose one of the big things with any puzzle is the information that you need to actually complete it. So, some puzzle designs, have inbuilt feedback when you try and complete the puzzle. One of my favorite ones is, Rogue Enterprises in your own worst enemy. Own worst enemy. It's not your own, it's just own worst enemy. He has you, perform some surgery on the Borg. And the feedback as part of the puzzle is that it tells you when you failed immediately right there. So okay, this option is not the right option. Whereas in other puzzles, you have to wait till the end before you say whether this is right or wrong. And other times, some puzzles you get more information than that. One of the puzzles that I created was sort of like a mini game. It was based on a board game called I can't remember what it's called now. Mastermind, where you had to try and make guesses to what the secret code was, and they told the response from the computer system was how close you were to having the correct response, whether you had like 4 different options, and if you got all 4 options correct, then it opened, but it told you if you only got one, if you didn't get any option right. So with that, you could work out, you use your own brain to work out the correct answer. In others, you have to try and search out, there is an answer embedded somewhere within other information. So, so information is always very important. And feedback, if I'm going
to do it, I like putting the information somewhere that's not right next to the puzzle, but that within the puzzle you can give them a clue as to where to find it. Kind of like, what they did in, the Mind Games episode with Cryptic, where the information and the things you needed to get were elsewhere on the map and you had to go find them and like that.
Yeah, like a lot of people, use default dialogues, which is really good for providing this information because it's there. You can always go back to that and find out and make choices and to get the information. If you missed it the first time it was presented, or maybe you just forgot. Getting information is always very important when you're dealing with a puzzle. I've got some other notes here that I made up. So mini games, as I said, the structure of each puzzle, especially if it's a dialogue type puzzle, can be very, very different. I've outlined some of the more common structures in my puzzle tutorial, but sometimes you want something that's a bit different, something that is a bit like a game, really. With that mastermind thing in the puzzle. So the structure of the puzzle itself is something that can vary widely. Some people might include a skip puzzle if you can, or you can't, or you don't. Personally, I very rarely do, but that's just my decision. Some people would, so the structure of a puzzle with a skip would be different to one that wouldn't. And also, so it's important to work out the structure of what you want to do before you actually get in there and do it. Because when you're in the dialogue Foundry editor, it can be quite confusing about what exactly is linked to what. So it's always good to have the structure planned out when you can. And I suppose that the last thing is, make sure that it's there for a purpose. A puzzle is an obstacle, something that the player has to overcome, and it has to make sense in terms of the story. So there is a whole lot to think about, but I think if you ask yourself, about the basic things, how do I want this structured? What do I want the player to do? How do I want the player to interact with this? Then you can come up with an interesting and relevant puzzle.
Well, I've played several puzzles over the years, and several different types of puzzles. My favorite one, I don't even remember the name of the mission, unfortunately, but you were investigating some ancient ruins, and what the puzzle did is that in order to get to the ruins, you had to decode this numerical sequence. So, what you actually
was it Kirkfat's Helnor of Troy?
I don't think so. I think this was for the that one Foundry challenge from way back where it was about making a discovery of monumental importance or something. I don't remember. Well, but anyway, in this one, what would happen when you did the puzzle was each stage of the puzzle that you successfully completed would cause this old ruined city thing to slowly rise out of the water. And once you've completed the puzzle, it will be high enough that the whole city was, or building, whatever, was out of the water. And to solve the puzzle required you to do math, but nothing particularly complicated. You could easily do the required math with a pocket calculator.
That brings up a good point, which is difficulty. How difficult do you want to make your puzzles?
I think you need to aim at the lowest possible common denominator. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, one of my missions, there's a Ghost of the Paul Marie, contains a puzzle where you have to try and investigate something and talk to people and basically accuse someone of doing something naughty and then present evidence why. I think I purposely try to make it fairly easy who it is, but still there were people that had no idea who said this puzzle has got like 81. It was 81 because I think different options and blah, sort of railed at me because it was hard, yet all the information was there. It was still easily to get. So, I think it is important that all the information is there. It's easy to get, but still that there is a bit of difficulty to it.
I was remembering one particular puzzle where it was sort of, like a trivia-based puzzle, where you were asked questions, you were supposed to supply the answers, but I think the answers, and I have no idea whose mission this was, and it wasn't me who played it, but I think something like the answers were things that the author had made up that weren't necessarily, you couldn't go look them up anywhere. Like, the name of a famous battle that the author just invented, and I don't think it was anywhere in the mission. And I would say that's a good example of how not to build a puzzle. I mean, if you're going to make a trivia-based puzzle, you got to be able to have something that people can go look up.
Oh, speaking of puzzles, I forgot to mention this earlier, that that mission that I did the review for earlier, the Iconian Connection, in order to get into the Tal Shiar base, you have to do a short quiz where you have to answer questions about sea life. Three of them, and of course, someone who knows a lot about Star Trek will be able to look at this and like, oh, okay, I know that. But there are all things about information that has been established about Sela, either in the game or in the TV show. Like, let's see, the first one was, what year was she born? The second one was that Sela is half Romulan and half what? And then the third one, you know what? I don't remember what the third one.
Yeah, well, if you are going to do trivia or something like that, then it has to be something that is like easily Googleable.
Googleable. Yes, that is a word. I would say, either easily Googleable or is somewhere in the mission for people to look it up. You know, if you have like a library computer somewhere that they can access and find that information. So I think probably the last thing about puzzles is, what about non-dialogue puzzles? And
in terms
puzzles.
of go ahead. Interacts. Oh, okay. Jumper puzzles. Yeah.
The first thing that came to mind when Drogan said that would be jumper puzzles.
Yeah. I think Havrah's done some good jumping puzzles. I'm not a particularly good jumper, but he is. So he created some jumper puzzles that he thought were, fairly easy to do, but still a lot of people had trouble with them.
Nemesis Chicken made an entire mission that's basically a single giant jumping puzzle.
Yeah. So obviously there is definitely the capability to put a jumping puzzle in. The thing is with jumping puzzles, and I suppose with all puzzles, is part of what Nemesis Chicken said last week. Testing. I mean, you need to make sure that you need to get some testing. I mean, you know the puzzle, so you put it in, so you can complete it. But what about other people? Is what I think hard easy, or is what I think easy hard? Is, you really have to put it, do a bit of, get other people to alpha and beta test it, just to make sure that
This goes back to that one playtesting discussion we had a while back, because you as the author have one thing in mind when you create it, but players...
So you test it that way, you test it with that in mind. That's so true.
And then players, if they don't figure out the way you had in mind, they might find it to be extremely hard. Or they might come up with some sort of shortcut that you never even realized was possible.
Very, very true. I know there's some other types of non-dialogue puzzles. I'm thinking, didn't Alimac build one that was a maze?
There are a few maze missions as well.
Yep.
So, basically, puzzle is anything that is, a success or a failure. You haven't got through the puzzle, so far the puzzle is a failure. You failed the puzzle. There's a lot of, things you can do with reach markers, with dialogue, with interacts that can help you create a puzzle.
Mm-hmm. You could make it, where you have to do a series of interacts in the right order to open a door. Something like that.
Yeah, until a box doesn't, a specific object doesn't appear until the object before it has been done. So, something like that could be very important, could be,
mm-hmm. Now I would, in that case, maybe make some options to skip that sort of thing. Like, have where you could either do all these switches and try and get them in the right order, or, fire your phaser at the door and it blows it open. So that, you sort of give people a choice of gameplay styles. That would be my recommendation. Obviously you don't have to, but, I'm always in favor of putting in the ability to skip things.
I suppose part of the thing, why I don't, and once again this is a personal choice type thing, is that, the puzzles, I put the puzzles in. I think I've put one puzzle in that as a skip option. Put a puzzle in because there is, I want the player to overcome this challenge. I want there to be a challenge that the player successfully overcomes. And I think that reward is, for feeling like you've overcome is something great. But, but then again, the other side of the coin is that if the player struggles and just becomes frustrated, then that's,
you don't want them
bad.
to just get really frustrated and quit.
Yeah.
You want to avoid that. And I'll say, Baz, that I've never had the urge to quit in one of your missions. So.
True.
All right, why don't we move it along? We had a topic submission from Stouts. He says, is the latest Foundry fix, by which he means the, now that time on social maps and time traveling to missions, does no longer count towards the mission's average playtime. Does that fix, constitute a blessing, or is it actually hurting the Foundry? And, by extension, the game itself.
I've been pondering that one, and I still haven't been able to come up with other than those people who came up with ways to write a story that didn't use any non-cryptic maps. But those are the only ones that I can think of that would actually be hurt by this. Because the vast majority of Foundry missions don't take place in social zones.
I can think of one of my very favorite missions that does.
Yeah, and I know of a couple that, a lot of it does take place on social maps. Not the whole thing, but a lot of it. And I think those authors were quite concerned.
Yeah. And rightly so.
Now Stouts provides a couple of examples, and essentially, let me see if I got this. He's essentially saying that a lot of their fixes have been sort of heavy-handed. And he says, looking back on the things, he's sort of against some of the things they've done to sort of combat exploits. The fleet mark removal fix, which resulted in drop in plays. He brings in the Tour of the Universe fix that was sort of, heavy-handed. 35, or let's see, people were earning earning EC hand over fist with that. The hourly Foundry fix, he says, doesn't necessarily constitute an incentive to play more Foundry missions. And then the latest sort of fix or change to how missions are listed and how they're rated. I don't think anybody's really happy with that. So the question is, these things that they're fixing, are they necessarily fixing things? Are they helping? Are they hurting? There's a lot of different stuff going on here. And while I think there could be an argument to be made that some of their fixes have been sort of heavy-handed and are hurting submissions that don't necessarily deserve to be hurt. I think the things that they've done have generally been good for the Foundry. I don't know what you guys think. It's sort of a meandering topic.
So I'm just waiting to hear what other people have to say. I have a definite opinion on this topic. If no one else has, other opinions, I kind of disagree with Drogan, and agree at the same time.
Well, I think at the end of the day, they have to be, and I think this in all sectors of the game, I think they have to be aggressive in combating exploits. Because I think they need to keep the game fair for everybody. Now, if that takes a little bit of EC out of the pockets of some people, well, I don't honestly care about that.
My thought is that with any exploit change, there are always going to be missions that are not exploits that are going to be harmed. The question is, are these exploits? Firstly, what type of exploits are they? Are they exploits that really hurt the economy of the game, or they exploits that, hurt the, stability, or, how important are they to the functioning of the game that these exploits are dealt with? And for the most part, I think they've all been fairly important that they've been fixed, perhaps to the exception of the rating change, even though I don't know what it's there for. I'd say they've got a reason for putting it in. I don't know what it is.
That was put in place to make it so that missions that had one play that was 5 stars wouldn't automatically get put at the top of the list.
Because they were getting a bunch of, exploit missions and sort of troll missions as well that were, the guy would put the mission up and then get 5 of his buddies to 5-star it, and it would jump to the top above missions that, the community had vetted and decided were good. That was the theory behind it.
Yeah, I think as I was saying, that would hurt, that one hurts new missions. But, I think, while they have been heavy-handed, I think the changes they've made have been needed to be made. And, there's gonna be, some missions that are affected by it. I think,
as the saying goes, this is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah,
obviously, if people didn't exploit the Foundry, we wouldn't have to have these changes.
And what you just said is exactly what my opinion on the matter is. This is why we can't have nice things. Yes, they've been heavy-handed. They've been extraordinarily heavy-handed, and I don't care. I'm glad that they have. What it comes down to is they can ban people. I'm glad for it. I have, over the last little bit of time, really, really become a fan of the way that Captain Gecko has been handling this. That Aurivera has been handling the exploits that are being seen, and when they're discovered, he does what it takes to get rid of them, because it seems to me like maybe it's not hyper obvious, but I feel like there is, if it's not a direct, we really care about the Foundry, there is we'd like to see this grow, and it can't grow if there's exploits happening. And that's kind of the feeling I'm getting. So yes, I feel like they've been heavy-handed, and I do feel like the Foundry has been hurt because of it. A couple of my favorite missions make extreme use of social maps. One of Captain Revo's best missions takes place primarily, the entire first half to 3/4 of the mission takes place talking to different people and interacting with different things on Deep Space Nine. That mission, that entire time no longer counts. And so, I feel like the Foundry has been hurt, but that's the price we pay, and this is why we can't have nice things. It's because of, grinders and exploits, and mainly it's because of exploits. There's nothing wrong with grinders, but exploits, and they're out there, and people are using them to break the reward curve of the game the way that the developers intended it to be. So I don't blame them at all for being heavy-handed. And,
as we all know, there could well be more changes that have to be made. Who knows?
I think
because people always, people are, as we've said before, people are they spend a lot of time and effort, to avoid spending time and effort.
Mm-hmm.
So, they'll find a new way to exploit. I'm sure they will. So I'm sure we'll see another change someday.
That's exactly it.
Well, why don't we move it along to some other topics? I've got a fun little one. We did a serious one. Let's do a fun one. While you were building your Miranda Mayhem missions, we were chatting, you and me, Hippiejohn, and we were talking about rock bands and music and things like that. And so I put together a little playlist of my favorite, of some of my favorite bands.
Female fronted, hardcore, heavy,
metal.
Heavy or metal bands, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You guys can't see it right now, but I'm making little devil horn signs here. Yeah, one of the things I'm big into, because, I have sort of a very modest, musical background. I played, the trumpet when I was a kid and, I had all kinds of musical stuff, come from a musical family. And so I like things that are musical, things that sound good. I don't, I like metal, but I don't particularly like guys who just scream into the mic the whole time. So I sort of gravitated towards bands with female lead singers because they sing very beautifully, and it really is a cool sound to hear when paired with heavy guitars and bass and that sort of thing. So while you were putting together your Miranda Mayhem, you were saying that it's like a intergalactic music group, and she's the lead singer. So okay, perfect. I'll put this together. You can have a listen, see if you like any of it. And lo and behold, you did.
Yeah, I discovered bands I had never heard before, and some of it helped inspire, I would play some of the music that you had linked in that playlist, and some of the stuff that I myself was already playing, and that's how I would test combats and such. Yeah, I like to have music when I'm using the Foundry for sure. It's the only way to be.
So that's my question to our other podcast hosts here. Do you guys like to listen to music when you do Foundry, and what music do you like?
I don't really put a playlist on much at all when I do the Foundry. Sometimes I might have something on the background, but mostly it's just focusing on what's in front of me.
The other thing that I usually have, if not music, is I have something on the TV going. Sort of just for background noise, because unless you're testing, there's no noise in the Foundry. So, except for those couple of objects that play noise when you put them on the map.
So in my case, what happens for me is it really depends on what kind of mission that I'm making. When I'm making a cartoon for Miranda Mayhem, one of the weaknesses of the Foundry is that I have no emote to make the drummer be playing the drums and the guitar player and bassist be doing anything but air guitar. So I'm never going to actually get to have a Miranda Mayhem concert appear in the Foundry. I mean, maybe I'll figure it out. Maybe I'll be able to do it one day. But for now, I don't have that capability, and so what I've been doing is just, whenever I'm making the mission, whatever music I'm listening to is what I imagine would be going on stage at an actual Miranda and the Mayhems concert. However, when I'm making like a Federation mission, I'm working on something I like to put on old Star Trek soundtracks from the movies or the television shows, the instrumental stuff. I never listen to It's a Long Road.
I think when I've got an idea for the drums, I just thought up. Would it be possible to have the drummer stand on something and use the cannibalizer mode?
Wow, that's a neat idea.
There's one that I've actually used for drummers, and I can't think of it. I will try and find it for you later.
But yeah, so I mean, music to me and some of the guys I know who do Klingon stuff, like Ceridium and Rogue Enterprise, linked me this really cool playlist at one point of just Klingon music, like the Klingon battle hymns and the Klingon, just the orchestral stuff that was going on when the Klingons appeared in the movies. And when I'm working on a KDF mission, I kind of like to have that on. So
I say the one thing most of all that I tend to find myself playing when I'm in the Foundry or in the game itself is the soundtrack to Tron Legacy. I think it's just kind of cool, and it goes with video games very well.
It's just an interesting choice. I get it. It's just such an interesting choice. I totally get it.
And I'm not usually, a techno Daft Punk kind of guy, but I just love that soundtrack. I don't know why. The other one, there's a couple others that tend to go pretty well with Stowe in general, and that's The soundtrack to Pacific Rim is a pretty good one. Not only because it has my one of my favorite guitarists of all time, Tom Morello, on it, guy from Rage Against the Machine, but I don't know, just because it has some really cool, catchy themes and that sort of thing. And of course it's sci-fi, so anything sci-fi goes with sci-fi, usually. The other one is the various soundtracks from the Mass Effect games. Those are good ones, and if you're doing something where you just, I've done this a few times when I've been playing with you guys, if you're doing something that's just pew-pew, that's just destruction, you can't do any better than the, soundtrack for Man of Steel. We all know that movie is pretty much destruction porn.
Well, one thing that I often do is when I'm writing dialogue, I'll usually listen to either Firefly or Skillet. One, because I like them, and two, because their stuff tends to be extremely emotional. And me personally, I tend to go towards the other approach when writing. So listening to something that has that's more emotional than unemotional helps me write things to be more emotional and come off less flat than they would otherwise.
It kind of helps you get in the mood, right? Of the scene you're writing.
Yeah, I guess that's another good way to put it.
Well, that's definitely sort of what music is there for, to get you in the mood for whatever it is.
Yeah.
All right. Did we have any other topics that we were talking about before the show?
I don't think so. I think we can keep it nice and short this week.
Keep it short this week.
Long episode last.
We definitely did. So I'll put this out to the community. If you have any particular music that you like listening to while you're foundrying or even just gaming, go ahead and post it in our mission. I know there was a thread up in 10 Forward about this very thing a little while back, and I even found something to listen to there that I'd never listened to before, so it can be a fun discussion. I'll say the other thing is I just posted a thread in the PvP section asking various questions of the PvP community, things like what would you like to see in a PvP map if we were able to build custom maps. And so I think that'll be a good discussion. We will hopefully, if we get some good responses, talk about that on a future episode of the show.
Yeah, unfortunately, that the whole thing with making PvP Foundry maps is going to take a lot of new tech.
Oh, it absolutely will. But I think the best thing to do is with these sorts of ideas is to keep the discussion going. And if Cryptic sees something they like, they'll go for it. I mean, it won't happen for a while, but it certainly doesn't hurt to talk about it. But for the time being, I think we will say good night.
Good night. Absolutely.
Good, technically morning, yeah.
Or good morning if you live in some other places in the world.
Well, we never really know when people can listen to it, so it's always
I just sort of pick one.